Hey everybody, welcome. It's me, JJ Panzer, your smart apartment advisor, back for 2021. It's good to see you. Thank you for joining me today. Not a whole lot to discuss so far, but it's certain to be a year full of interesting developments. Hopefully, we are able to get on top of the pandemic and life can go back to what we got accustomed to before. But I'll just start by saying that, thankfully, we are in a position now with the inauguration complete, and now we know what the next 4 years is going to, at least who's going to be at the helm of the ship. And we have a president who will acknowledge that there are some difficult challenges ahead, and hopefully will help us get on top of this with a more organized and forthright approach to the pandemic. So that's good. The initial COVID relief bill that now President Biden announced and has introduced and will be looking for approval in Congress to pass includes what appears to be right now an extension of the eviction moratorium through September. So if that passes the way it is now without any modifications, we may very well have no evictions through September, which is, if you'd asked me a year ago whether that was going to be a catastrophe, I'd say yes. And if you ask me now, I'm not sure it matters, because I'm not sure I necessarily want too many people moving out. And I am not a person who's really eager to get vacancies. And I don't know if, I don't think that the issue that we all anticipated in the beginning of people gaming the system and trying to not pay rent based on the fact that they that they can't be evicted has necessarily materialized. AB 3088 here in California had a provision in it that required us to now, as of January, serve a 15-day notice to any tenants who had unpaid balances from earlier in the year, and let them know, especially if they had neglected to pay their 25% minimum payment for the last few months, that they could be evicted for continuing to not pay the rent past January 31st. And that was very important. And we only had 3 tenants out of our entire portfolio who had not begun paying at least 25%. And it kind of shows me that the amount of game playing that we might have possibly expected has not materialized. And I'm hopeful that once we get through the lengthy vacancy times that we are currently experiencing and the rental market starts to recover, that maybe we'll get people to deal with us on an honest and forthright basis, because we've basically had that throughout this whole pandemic. It has not been a free-for-all of people not paying their rent because they don't have to, and it reinforces my feeling that people will do the right thing if they are at all able to do the right thing. And so I'm pleased with that. I was chatting with John a little bit about the rental market before we started this call, and he said the first time he can remember that there really wasn't any change in the level of activity going into November and December. It was, a lease or two that we would be able to sign every week throughout that time period. I mean, we've got 75 vacancies, I think, right now out of 650 units, which is a lot, and many of them have been vacant for a very long time. But we're seeing basically the winter market was what we were left with after the initial complete stoppage of everything back in March, when we had the first lockdown and everybody actually realized that coronavirus was a real thing that was going to seriously impact our lives for a long time. By the time June rolled around, I think it was, we started to see some pickup in activity, but it always felt like a wintertime, Christmas, Thanksgiving market. And that's basically what we've got. It's Christmas all the time, which is not a good thing in the real estate market. Christmas is not a happy time necessarily for the business. And, I get reports from our leasing agents every week on Monday saying, this is how many showings we've had. And I still have a lot of zero showings or, one no show. And the only people who are interested in moving within San Francisco are people who are already here and who are playing musical chairs to get a better deal. And that's basically what we would get in November and December. People who would look at it and think, maybe I can negotiate a better deal with a landlord who's got a vacancy at Christmas time because I want a place that has, different neighborhood or better amenities, will allow me to have a pet someday, whatever it ends up being. And so it is, it's definitely a difficult time, but I'm hoping that we see the light at the end of the tunnel. I don't know to what extent any of the stimulus and the rental relief assistance, I think it's 25 or $30 billion in the COVID relief package that President Biden introduced. There are all kinds of restrictions in that come down to us at the city level. The city funding has, preferential requirements for people at less than 50% of the area median income and things like that. But it's a time when we're going to have to wait and see what those programs look like and who the relief monies go to. Interestingly, one of the 3 tenants that we notified that they had 15 days to start paying their rent called us and immediately told us he'd be out in a week, which is interesting. Now we have to go decide how we're going to collect, tens of thousands of dollars of back rent from somebody who told us he doesn't have a job and hasn't had one for a long time and has been unable to work. So we'll find out what happens there. But it's still a difficult time, but I'm hoping that we're rounding the corner. Josh and I were discussing what the market looks like in a broader term when we started the call. Josh, you were saying that you did see sort of a resumption of normal wintertime trends in the sale market for apartment buildings.
Yeah, so apartment buildings are still kind of going through the same struggles that they were early winter, late fall. So a lot of just buildings with a lot of vacancies, right? So I'm just seeing, most buildings that are on the market right now in San Francisco, I'm seeing 25% or more of the units being vacant. And so I think a lot of people, what's happening is they're getting a lot of vacancies and then they're at a crossroads and they're like, hey, should I sell and just kind of move on from this problem of all these vacant units or hang in there? And so, a lot of people are testing the market to sell but the market's not really there yet.
Right.
So, buying into vacant, 30% vacant buildings is not terribly appealing. I think there's going to be a lot of deals. There are definitely a lot of deals for people who don't need to take on any debt. So if you buy a building, 50% occupied, and you're like, okay, I'm cash flowing, I'm earning 2% on that money for a while, and you can kind of ride it out. But I don't know how many people are just throwing, $3, $4, $5 million into a building with no debt. So a lot of watching and waiting. Just like that building we were talking about in Soma,
right?
It's 4 units, fully vacant. I called you and I said, hey, dude, should we manage it? Should we lease it and manage it, or should we try to sell it? And you're not feeling optimistic,
no,
to say the least, about Soma right now.
Well, I mean, certainly not Soma, but also just a building with all vacant units.
Right.
The owner is going to be, even with no debt, the owner is going to be somebody who's going to think, got to get these things rented, and I have had no luck in that's the hardest area to
rent. And just right. And so just not knowing when you can fill that unit, right? So if we just knew, okay, 3 months, everything's going to come back in 3 months, 6 months,
Or if
And, we
if you
just don't
reduce
have
the
an
price,
exact timeline.
yeah, if you reduce the price by a lot, we can probably get someone fairly quickly. Like I have no confidence even
Even with
in
that,
big price reductions
right,
because it doesn't matter what the price is if nobody's buying it.
right. So I have noticed East Bay has improved. The
Okay.
rental market has improved a bit since the new year. It was Deadsville, November and December, and then January. I'm just noticing some people moving around and looking for spaces.
Where are those people that you've rented to coming from? What's their situation? You've gotten to meet them. You've been intimately involved in that leasing process. What are they like?
Yeah, so some of the people that are leaving roommate situations.
Okay.
So, this is one bedroom and studio units. So people leaving situations, living with folks where it's just kind of time to go. And in Oakland in particular, prices have dropped 10-15%. So there's some, people, it's enough of a drop where someone sharing a space with somebody else, they can say, oh, I can actually afford to go by myself now. And people living with family, a couple first-time apartment renters who are just coming of age, and the prices are now kind of more accessible. So I'm seeing some of that happen. So it's not really people trading as much as actually looking for units in kind of normal ways. But I think some of the roommate situations where people were moving in with family and friends to save a buck, maybe their jobs are starting to come back and maybe they're ready to break out and do their own thing and have a one bedroom or a studio to themselves. So I'm seeing a little more activity.
That's good.
Yeah.
That is interesting to hear. That's the sort of the natural order of things. When your need for living space changes, or what you need from your living space changes, you start looking for a new place.
Yeah.
And that's good and natural. And that's another thing that tends to go away in the wintertime that comes back in the spring.
Yeah.
And so it'll be interesting to see if we get a little more of that in the spring. That in and of itself doesn't sustain San Francisco because we depend so much on employment and tourism and all that kind of stuff that we don't have right now.
Yeah.
But it's hopeful to hear that people are making that choice because if you don't feel optimistic about your future opportunities, you will not decide to go rent yourself a studio or a bedroom by yourself.
Right.
So only if you have some really awful situation with roommates will you do that, and taking on that responsibility on your own is difficult. So are they moving from within the same community or are they coming from other cities?
Both.
Both. Okay.
Both, yeah. And these are lower end kind of units. Are you finding more activity on the lower end compared to the higher upper end, or are you seeing similar lack of demand across the board?
Well, I don't have a lot of really high-end units to be representing, and most of what we're renting is under $5,000 a month. But definitely the lowest end and the highest end are challenging.
Okay.
Stuff in the middle, the $2,500 to $4,000 units are pretty good. We can adjust the pricing and be reasonable and hope to get something out of it. If we typically expect that an interested party that's well qualified will ask for at least a 10% reduction to close a deal, and they're going to want 4 to 6 weeks before their lease starts.
Really?
Yeah.
That's pretty automatic as far as people.
More or less. There's always some sort of a negotiation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is very different.
Yes. Well, and we used to be able to figure, well, someone else will come along and be interested in renting this place if you won't. So we can be, harder on the terms, but we can't do that right
now. Yeah. Yeah. So, with the vaccine rolling out, obviously, I do think, things will improve certainly in the spring.
Yes.
but we're a bit in the we're still in the tough
Challenging times.
times.
Yes, the
Yeah.
challenging times. Yeah, so I don't have too much else to discuss, though. I will be bringing more information in future calls, and I'll be giving you updates on where we're at legally and where we're at in the rental market, and financially, and how to be competitive in this market. A lot of the same stuff I've talked about all year still applies, as far as making sure that your units are competitive and that they look good. We offer as much amenities as possible. Once again, the big stuff that tends to help apartments to get rented fastest is to have lots of laundry capacity if it's in a larger building with multi-units on a coin system, but also laundry in unit is huge. Permission to have pets, even if tenants don't have a pet at the moment. They really like knowing that at some point, if they want a pet, they can have it. And I find that not every pet unit gets rented to a pet owner. And I don't have a lot of requests from non-pet owner pets to get pets after they've moved in, but they sometimes seem to bristle at the restriction and move on if they're a cat person and they don't have a cat at the moment, they think maybe they will someday, and they overestimate how much that's worth to them. But those things are really important. And location. I would say that the hardest hit areas are the areas that have always been some of the best areas, and some has been really hard hit. The North Beach has had a tremendously bad time of things because everything that you're there for is closed. But the central parts of the city, Noe Valley's doing pretty well. The Mission's okay, and the west part of the city, the Richmond, the Sunset near Golden Gate Park, has not seen as much of a drop off. I don't have a huge portfolio in that part of town, but it hasn't been as bad, and I haven't seen as many tenants moving out. I haven't had as many vacancies, and I haven't had a lot of claims for needing to defer rent as a result of the pandemic. It's just been more stable out there. The rents weren't as high, and the rents haven't fallen nearly as much. So there's some value to being in a quiet neighborhood, a quiet area from the market standpoint. So unless anybody, Margot or Brent, has any questions you'd like to throw in there, or topics you want to discuss, I am happy to have you, and thanks for joining us. And Margot, congratulations on getting your vaccination. And I hope to hear more and more people who are able to tell me that they've had theirs, so that we are aware that it's coming. And I hope that lots of people are able to get vaccinated quickly. We can, go back to I don't know, maybe someday meeting in person. Wouldn't that be great?
Oh, interesting. What's that all about?
I don't know.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for doing this, JJ. Really, especially after coming in quarantine. Appreciate it. We'll see you next week or whenever you do it next time.
I'll see you next week, and I'll have more to share, and we'll hopefully have Denise with us next week. We'll talk a little bit more about the legal aspects of collecting these debts and about approaches, and I'll always look forward to seeing everybody. Take care. Have a good rest of your week.
Oh, take care. Thank you.
Yeah. Congratulations on now we've turned the corner. Hopefully we have 4 years of stability, and
yes,
things will be looking up.
Right.
Take care, everybody.
All right. See ya.
Bye-bye.